Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Quick shout out to my newest patrons, Jimmy B, Arnold B, and Buddy R. Thank you for choosing to support the channel. The word is that Tesla wrote a letter for the current administration with some concern over tariffs and specifically retaliatory tariffs. Tesla raised concerns about these ongoing tariffs, warning that Tesla could be exposed to retaliatory tariffs, and they urged the administration to consider the downstream impacts. This was an unsigned letter, so we don't know who specifically wrote it, but it was on Tesla letterhead. Tesla noted tariff actions by the Trump administration have resulted in immediate reactions by the targeted countries, including increased tariffs on EVs. Past U.S. special tariff actions have increased costs to Tesla for vehicles made in the US and increased costs for those same vehicles when exported from the US, resulting in a less competitive international marketplace for US manufacturers. The USTR should investigate ways to avoid these pitfalls in future actions. Tesla pointed to an example of shortages of lithium-ion batteries despite Tesla's own efforts to make them domestically. And remember, Elon did say on the Q4 call that to some degree, Tesla is experiencing a battery shortage. Nonetheless, even with aggressive localization of the supply chain, certain parts and components are difficult or impossible to source within the US. Tesla supports a process by the USTR to further evaluate the domestic supply chain limitations to ensure US manufacturers are not unduly burdened by these trade actions that could result in the imposition of cost-prohibitive tariffs on necessary components or other import restrictions on items essential to support US manufacturing jobs. Trade actions should not and need not conflict with objectives to further increase and support domestic manufacturing. This should be somewhat unsurprising, as from day one we've said that it's not so much US tariffs on other countries that Tesla needs to be concerned about, it would be any of these retaliatory tariffs. That's because Tesla doesn't import any of the vehicles it actually sells in the United States, it makes them all right here. Tesla said as USTR continues to evaluate possible trade actions to rectify unfair trade practices, consideration should also be given to the timeline of implementation. U.S. companies will benefit from a phased approach that enables them to prepare accordingly and ensure appropriate supply chain and compliance measures are taken. Tesla also said it was making changes to its supply chains to find as many local suppliers for its cars and batteries, so it was less reliant on foreign markets. There's still plenty of uncertainty around all of this, which of course the market doesn't like, and that's been clear. But remember, April 2nd is a key date as all of this unfolds. That could be when the implementation of reciprocal tariffs on US trading partners actually go into effect. I honestly feel like we're watching the art of the deal unfold in real time right now, so hopefully the deal gets done sooner rather than later, and everybody can proceed and make their new plans based on how the dust settles. According to the Chinese source 36KR, they're saying a stripped down Model Y will be the first more affordable model that Tesla will offer. They said compared with the current Model Y, the new car's battery, power, chassis, and other parts have basically not changed much. So if those parts are mostly the same, then where will that 20% reduction come from? My guess would be we'll see things like a cloth or fabric interior, no temperature controlled seats or steering wheel, no ambient lighting, maybe no glass roof, only the driver's seat with powered controls, no second row screen, and so on. And remember, Elon forecast to us late last year, he said on a call how excruciatingly difficult it was to remove 20% of costs from a vehicle. So that was the dead giveaway for me that these more affordable models were going to be stripped down versions of the Model Y and 3. Plus, they told us they'd be on the same manufacturing lines as the current Y and 3, so it all makes sense, and it's why I never bought into the Cybercab going into production with a steering wheel. That needs its own production method, so making that on the current Model Y lines made no sense. So for those reasons, this report does sound legit to me. The outlet said Tesla could release the affordable Model Y in China in the second half half of this year, but they said if demand for the standard Model Y wanes. On the other hand, Reuters said mass production would begin in 2026 in Shanghai. It's unclear when the affordable vehicle would begin deliveries in the US, Europe, and other markets. To that though, I would say for Tesla stock in the short term, we better hope that it's toward the middle of this year, because that's what the market is expecting, because Tesla and Elon have not told us otherwise. So I would just put out a word of caution if we were to hear that these more affordable models were delayed until 2026 in all markets. The market will not like that. Right now in the United States, if you want a new Model Y, your only option is the launch series, so the old Model Y is no more. However, before it was removed from the new vehicle configurator, the base price for the long-range rear-wheel drive was $44,990. So if you knock off 20% of that price, that would take us down to $35,900. And from there, if you take off an additional $7,500 for the tax credit that these vehicles will presumably qualify for, that would be $28,400. We also have Reuters saying that Tesla will make a lower cost version of its best-selling Model Y in Shanghai. Tesla's developing this model under codename E41 and will build it using existing production lines. Mass production will begin at its biggest factory, which is Shanghai, in 2026. The car will be smaller and cost at least 20% less to produce than the refreshed Model Y launched late last year. So that quick exercise I just ran through on what this more affordable version of the Model Y might cost would only be if Tesla was aiming to keep the margins the same, if indeed they were able to reduce 20% of the cost. Reuters said the Shanghai output will be mainly sold in China to defend market share, but the model will also be produced in Europe and North America. Again, though, that's not really news, because we should be expecting that in time, all of the current manufacturing lines that make the 3 and Y will also be used for these more affordable vehicles. That means Fremont, Austin, Shanghai, and Berlin. This is the chart that shows why these new, more affordable models are so crucial for Tesla right now. We know the base Model Y starts just under $45,000, but to keep the comparison the same, let's include the $7,500 tax credit, which would add this part of the pie, adding an additional 23% addressable market for a total of about 43% for the vehicles as it stands now. But with these more affordable models, if Tesla can have an offering around $28,000, that would unlock an additional 32% of an addressable market, meaning Tesla would go from addressing about 43% of the market right now up to 75% with these more affordable models. And if you've been on social media the past few weeks with Tesla in the headlines, I'm sure you've seen plenty of people saying, I would love to buy a Tesla to support Elon and the company, I just can't afford it. Thus, doing some simple math, if we take Tesla selling about 650,000 cars just in the US last year while addressing about 43% of the market, then we can assume that if Tesla addresses 75% of the market, they may sell around 1.1 million vehicles just in the US, ceteris paribus. For what it's worth, that would be about 71% growth. Now, we should not obviously be expecting that for this year. It's going to take time for this to ramp up. But my point here is, looking at this from a TAM perspective, it should be quite encouraging as we head into 2026. As a nice nod of confidence and support, Israel has asked Tesla to submit a bid to provide EVs to their state's top officials. In a statement, they said, "We're not going to bow to woke trends. A car is a car is a car, and a great car is a great car is a great car. Teslas are great cars, and we look forward to studying their bid." Andre Tierig, plant manager of Giga Berlin, came out and said that despite everything going on politically and in the media with Elon across the EU and specifically in Germany, all of that is not expected to have any impact on the Tesla factory in Berlin. The word is there are no plans for production shutdowns, staff reductions, or short-time work in Grünheide. On the contrary, production is not being scaled down but is currently ramping up again after the model change. When asked about why Tesla sales are down in Germany, Thierry said the sole reason for why fewer cars are currently rolling off the assembly line is the changeover to the new Model Y. So listen, in fairness, I would push back and say it's probably not the only reason. There's definitely some impact on politics and other things, but I would say it is the main reason. Tesla is working with Baidu in China to improve its ADAS system, specifically FSD. Baidu has sent a group of engineers from its mapping team to Tesla's Beijing office in recent weeks to work on better integrating Baidu's navigation map information. This would include things like lane markings and traffic signals, again for FSD. They said the move is aimed at improving version 13's knowledge of Chinese roads with more accurate and updated map information. Late Post reported that Tesla did send some engineers from the US headquarters to China in early February to locally deploy a more mature version of FSD and to optimize the algorithm. My guess is part of that work was using those videos of the local roads in China just from the internet to train the network. Of course, we hope that sometime soon Tesla can either send this training data from China back to the US or Tesla can set up a supercomputer cluster in China. But for now, Tesla will be forced to do what it does best, and that's adapt on the fly. Many of you guys know I'm not one to give Jim Cramer unnecessary airtime, but in this case, he was talking about Larry Williams, and that is a name worth knowing. Back in 1987, Larry Williams actually started his rise to fame from the Robbins World Cup of Championship futures trading. It was during this time he turned $10,000 into over $1 million in 1 year, which is just over an 11,300% return. He has been on the record with some success in calling major market reversals. He did it during the illness bottom in 2020 and another one in late 2023. And finally, if you appreciate technical analysis and the tool that it can be, Williams has actually created some of his own indicators over decades of being in the business. And in the trading world, it's really not uncommon to hear him referred to as a legend or a market wizard. So don't pay attention to Jim, but I would listen to what Larry said.
And you know what he's doing tonight? He's calling the bottom in Tesla. First, I want you to take a look at the weekly chart of Tesla paired with Larry's proprietary valuation model. According to this model, Tesla has finally reached undervalued territory. And when the stocks come down to these levels in the past, it typically attracts real buyers. It leads to a big bounce. Speaking of buyers, check out this chart of Tesla's paired with Larry's measure of professional accumulation. Even as the stocks come down, this picture shows very aggressive buying. Not selling, but buying. That's typically an harbinger of higher prices. Professional money managers have begun adding to positions while individual investors have been throwing in the towel. That's what you've seen. And it usually means that you should be buying alongside of these investors. Larry loves to look at how stocks tend to trade over the course of the year. He goes over the history, then finds a seasonal pattern that plays out time after time. The true seasonal pattern in blue shows that Tesla typically begins rallying at this time of the year. Sure enough, the stock's already going up. So I've got to tell you, I'm with that. Now, Larry also likes to hunt for cycles that seem to be repeating themselves beyond the annual seasonal cycle. Now, he'll identify a bunch of these, then combine them together into a wave that predicts where the stock is likely headed. So here's what Tesla looks like with this cycle forecast attached to it. The forecast is blue on the way up, gray on the way down. Right now, suggests that Tesla should be ready to rally, maybe furiously, with a pullback creating another buying opportunity around mid-June. Larry notes that we've seen this wave in Tesla stock numerous times before historically. Stocks rallied 80% of the time during this time period. I think that's pretty good odds.
So look, you guys know I'm a long-term investor through and through, but that doesn't mean I can't also pay attention to short-term movements like this just to try to optimize or maximize the number of shares I end up with. And just a quick FYI to everybody out there saying, oh, these Tesla protests are all peaceful. No, they're actually not. Just yesterday, more than 12 gunshots were fired around a Tesla dealership in Portland. And guys, I don't use this term lightly, but that and clips like this are really loud reminders that this is an illness.
While the rich dream of Nazi robots and swastikas, what the rest of us need is warm housing, clean and affordable energy, and cheap public transportation. Shut down the fascists.
the government is failing to protect our democracy from the fossil fuel companies and from power-hungry billionaires. I will not stand by and watch as the climate crisis creates global food shortages, mass starvation, and the destruction of civil society. Shut down the fascists.
Don't let the billionaires decide your future. Let's reclaim democracy. Join us this spring in Parliament Square as we demand an emergency plan to just stop oil by 2030.
I mean, guys, are we serious? Do you not see the irony in this clip? And this stuff is happening around the globe. They're saying we want clean, affordable energy, affordable transportation, and they're yelling about the climate crisis. Meanwhile, they're vandalizing and attacking Tesla, the one company doing the most to solve the problems they're complaining about. And when you really watch it, it does actually feel like they're just robots reading a script. And the cherry on top, they're a part of this movement, Just Stop Oil, but yet they're attacking Tesla, again, the one company that gives us the best chance to move away from that. I really wish this was just part of a comedy skit or something like that, but this type of behavior is just completely asinine. It makes absolutely no sense. There is zero foundation of reason or logic in these arguments, and I'm not going to apologize for calling that out. Another cherry on top, we have the Premier of BC asked if Tesla would be the only company removed from the BC rebate program.
Premier, the measures regarding the Tesla chargers, are those only for Tesla, or will they apply to other American manufacturers? And can you explain the reasoning of why you're taking that measure?
Yeah, it's just for Tesla, and it's because of Elon Musk.
Obviously, Tesla will survive this one, but I just wanted to say I'm no lawyer, but I would certainly question the legality of this type of behavior. Monroe Live put out the full interview with Lars and Franz on the new Model Y. I just want to share one clip of Lars. The kids nowadays say in his bag when somebody's basically in the zone, and Lars had a quick clip that I thought was a great example of just that and a reminder of how much talent there is at Tesla beyond just Elon.
But we did it the old-fashioned way. You know, like we didn't just throw a bunch of sound deadening in the car. That's like easy in too many parts. So for me, it's like you start at the source, you go to the tire, you make sure the tire is like, you know, vibrational transmission is much lower. Its rolling plushness is better, and its you know, acoustic radiated noise is lower as well. We do that through tread pattern optimization with our suppliers. So you make the tire better, then you stiffen the body. Right, and we do that locally where we need it, where we know we had weak points before. So we actually have about 6-7% more torsional stiffness on this car. But some of the upper arm and lower arm attachment points that were problem points for us for NVH, we actually increased the local point mobility up as much as 40% in some areas, a couple areas up as much as 80%. And that's just like through, you know, small changes to the body structure. Either we've replaced brackets with different brackets, or in the case of the casting that we have on the front upper arm, we've changed like sort of the thickness in the ribbing just to improve the stiffness. And when you have the stiffer body and the like more compliant, softer, like I shouldn't say softer, but more isolating tire, then you can let the suspension work more. And so that's a big bonus, but we didn't just stop there. We also changed the front and rear suspension kinematics completely. Because of what I told you about the rear lift balance, we're able to reduce the anti-lift at the rear. So we actually have more mechanical compliance when we hit a bump. Wheel goes more back and up with the rear suspension, which means it's fighting less of the impact as it goes through the stroke. And then on the front suspension, we actually slowed down the steering ratio a little bit, reduced our like sensitivity to Ackerman through the turning angle, so that you have more linear progressive feel from the suspension. But also we then have less, we have more disturbance rejection and less like issues when we hit little inputs just from the suspension. So you couple all of that, like better tire, stiffer body, suspension that works more for ride and compliance. And then we added on top of that frequency selective damping, which is basically 2 valves in the damper, one for high frequency, one for low frequency. You know, it's got a little mass on it. Bypass valve opens when you're in high frequency, so you get more flow. So a lot of changes for the suspension.
Yeah.
I just couldn't stop thinking about how that clip really encapsulates so much of what we all love about Tesla. In case you're looking for a great deal on the outgoing Model Y, be sure to check the inventory as you'll find discounts for thousands of dollars. With more comedic material, Senator Mark Kelly decided to sell his Tesla Model S, and what did he replace it with? A Chevy Tahoe full gas vehicle. If you're wondering why this is such ridiculous behavior, well, Democratic Senator Mark Kelly has been consistently on the record as a vocal supporter of EVs and climate change policies. Kelly has pledged massive investments in renewable energy, and he has said multiple times that climate change is a threat and an opportunity for Arizona. Fast forward to today, and he's driving this Z71 that gets 17 miles per gallon combined. I'm really just struggling to understand how we're at a point where there is so much hypocrisy out there. And we still have no idea what's going on with Kim Kardashian and Tesla and Optimus, but here are some new pictures of her with the bot. Tesla stock dropped as low as $240 intraday, but closed at $249.98, up 3.86%, while the Nasdaq was up 2.49%. And just FYI, going forward, I'm going to start referencing the NDX or the Nasdaq 100 instead of the Nasdaq Composite. The NDX removes financial companies, so it's probably a slightly better comparison for Tesla. It was an average volume day for Tesla, but over the past 2 weeks, we've seen the average volume jump by about 15 to 20 million shares. Hope you guys have a wonderful and a safe weekend. Please like the video if you did. You can find me on X, linked below, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.